Everyone knows I love that. All right, 6 feet and start the recording. I'm like your grandfather that always misses the same turn. Grandpa, weren't you supposed to turn? Yes, I was supposed to turn there. So they haven't missed much. Just a little bit of discussion about bears and a dog that's chewing up paper. So anyway, has anyone ever seen a cub live in the field? You can see very quickly how people get into trouble, right? Because I've had a chance to see a very, very young cub, and I'm not able to see the chats right now. They come and go. So somebody needs me, yell at me. I saw somebody chatted me. When you see a young cub, even as a wildlife biologist, and you see that, it's like, oh man, that's really cute. And you find yourself just wanting to go look at it. And that's how you get into trouble in many cases. So resist that temptation. It's tough. My favorite encounter ever with a black bear, my salamander work on our second highest mountain on White Top typically ends at the very latest on Halloween. And one year we had enough weather that I was actually able to get some data on Halloween. It was, air temperature was 34 degrees, 35 degrees, and it was raining. So I had rain gear up and a hood on. You know, the rain's hitting your rain gear and you don't hear very well. I was on all fours digging around looking for salamanders, and out of the corner of my eye, I thought, that looks like a black bear, and literally looked up, and it was digging around looking for grubs and things. It had its head down. I was downwind of it, so it never smelled me. We were within 15, 18 feet of each other. Luckily, you know, your instinct kicks in, you do what you're supposed to do, and that's stand up and yell, you know, make noise. And I felt bad because when I did, it startled it, and it took off running down this steep mountain, tried to jump a log, and it didn't clear it, and literally did a head, like a front roll going down the mountain. But one that has not habituated should run from you. Now, one of my green salamander sites in near Norton, Virginia, in Southwest Virginia, professor I worked with at UVA Wise, we were sampling one day, and this car pulled up. It's blowing its horn the whole time. And he's like, you're going to love this. I'm like, what are they doing? He goes, you're going to love it. The black bear had been conditioned to come to the car when they blew their horn. They would let their little 4- and 5-year-old kids get out of the car and feed the black bear powdered donuts. Don't do that at home, kids, right? Anyway, that's how the bears end up dead, and it could cause problems. When they're going dormant, their body temperature only drops about 1, maximum 7 degrees Celsius. The females are going to give birth while they're in that dormancy, often in hollow tree cavities. They'll den in Southwest Virginia approximately 95 days, depending on our weather activity. Young males will get up. If you have a winter period where you have 5-6 days that get warm, a young male will sometimes come out and look around for food. One of the spots you often find young males are where trees will uproot. They like to get underneath kind of that root mass that's in the air, and the larger females typically will den in old cavities. Okay, so the family Procyonidae, pro means before, and Cion is the dog. Now, we don't have the ringtail in Virginia, but you do if you go to the southwestern part of the United States. In Virginia, we only have one species. This whole family, their characteristic is that they have tails that, with the exception of one individual, that have dark bands across them. Many of them are partially arboreal, so our member is very much arboreal, and they walk on the soles of their feet typically. And who's our member? Well, if you figured out the genus with Procyon loader, you probably figured it out. Here's our raccoon, the northern raccoon. They have that awesome mask that is typically a great field mark for them. Their front paws with that opposable thumb, they're very good for grasping. They're typically nocturnal. If you see a raccoon during the day, do not automatically assume that it has rabies. That's a very common mistake. They won't always do that. They typically will come out in the day if there's issues with food, if there's issues with young. So now, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go out and pick one up, right? But don't immediately assume, crap, we've got an issue going on with rabies in an area. They're omnivorous, and in our sites, they've started to actually become a pretty bad problem as they eat our four-toed salamander eggs. They actually become a problem there, but very common in parks and picnic areas. There was an awesome study done to look at how urban raccoons compared to more rural raccoons. Which one of the two do you think has a better chance of being hit by a car? A raccoon that's running around in New York City, or a raccoon somewhere out in Giles County or Craig County here? Any thoughts?
We're saying rural.
It's the rural, yeah. And you're like, wait, it doesn't make sense because in New York City, there's cars everywhere. You would expect them to become, you know, roadkill pretty easily. And what happens is those in the cities have learned, and it's somewhat of an adaptation, to be able to deal with traffic. They know how to cross. They actually, in the studies, they videoed them watching the cars in the city and knowing when to cross. And ours don't necessarily have that experience. The other fun thing in these urban studies they've done is they expected them to be in city parks. So they put collars on them that track their movements with GPS, and they never went into the parks that often. They would stay along the perimeter of the parks. Why do you think that was? I mean, they're a wild animal. You would expect them to want to go into nature, and instead they were staying kind of right along the edges. Guess what's along the edges of most parks along the walkways? Trash cans. So basically they were feeding along that. But that's an animal that's adapted extremely well to be around people. All right, our family Felidae. Oh, now I actually have my chat just popped up out of nowhere. So nice. The family Felidae. We have 45 species in the world. There's only one confirmed species in Virginia, and that's the one, we'll talk about this. You can get into some major arguments with local folks that will tell you they're seeing the animal that is on the screen right now. Felis actually means cat. And again, speaking of cute young animals that can get you in trouble, what do you see on the bottom there? That's a mountain lion kitten. And that's the mountain lion, also known as, is there another name you know for mountain lions? Common name?
Cougar.
Cougar. Anything else?
Don't they have like
Panther?
They have
what
like,
else?
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I love mountain lions, but I know that they're the most they have the most nicknames out of all the North American animals.
They do. And in South America, most people refer to them as pumas. And if you've ever seen the shoes, that's what's on them. You know, those weird friends of mine that actually went to Penn State, they refer to them as the Nittany lion. That's what it's actually talking about. But yeah, as Peyton said, this animal goes from Alaska to the southern tip of South America. And before Europeans came, it was by far the most widely distributed mammal in the New World, and potentially one of the most widely distributed animals on the planet, terrestrial animals for that aspect. They are incredibly adaptable. They can survive in Alaska. They can survive in the Andes Mountains at elevations that you and I would struggle with, elevational altitudinal sickness, chasing down llamas and things. They are incredible scavengers. So Don Lindsay, who was on the faculty here at Virginia Tech, he's just retired. He actually gave a talk to our mammalogy course. I know a couple of you that were in mammalogy probably still remember that, but he spent a good chunk of his life trying to document if there are mountain lions still in the Appalachian Mountains. And he's had a few credible reports. Now, what I always tell people is, I'm not saying they won't be here, because I really believe in your careers in the next 20 years, there probably will be mountain lions. There's a population now I should say a population. There have been individuals spotted now in Middle Tennessee, and they're coming across the Mississippi River out of the Dakotas. And those are credible reports. The State Wildlife Agency, if you just Google, actually, I think I have a map. Do I? Oh, yeah, here we go. We've got a video. They are in the state of Tennessee now. There's been animals that have been collared in the Dakotas, and they showed up in Connecticut. So it shows you, especially young males, really, really dispersed. They travel great distances. The problem that a lot of people have here is they say, well, they're here, but no one has ever been able to provide me with a photograph of one. Roadkill. I mean, just today, right yesterday, Nick and I were talking about that at the beginning of class. One of the more rare mammals in the state of Virginia, someone just sent me a picture and said, hey, here it is. They're holding it. And we found it dead in the road. The other thing is, how many deer hunters in the state of Virginia do you think and turkey hunters have trail cameras up? Several? Yeah, I wonder how many game cameras are up in the state of Virginia, not even including researchers like what Dr. Kelly works with and some of you help her with. I'm just thinking hunters alone, thousands, right? And not a single picture of a mountain lion has ever been produced. When they invaded Missouri, they got 1 or 2 reports, just like Tennessee is getting now, of animals on trail cameras. People thought, well, it's someone's escaped pet. That's normally the go-to. And state wildlife biologists went out and they agreed that probably was the location the video was taken in, that it hadn't been falsified or anything. The next year, they got 5 or 6 mountain lions. The year after that, they got 30 or 40 on cameras. The year after that, they had one hit on an interstate highway. When you've got a dead mountain lion on the side of the interstate and you could pick it up and hold it, then there's proof that they're there. So check out this video about what's happening in Tennessee over the last couple of years.
Tennessee is now home to a couple of big cats. The species hasn't been seen here for about 100 years. But since September, TWRA has confirmed 6 different sightings of cougars or mountain lions in the state, including 2 new confirmations just last week. Our Rebecca Schleicher has information on the latest sightings and what this means for folks who live in the area.
Carrie Rory, TWRA says this map makes it official. Cougars are now in Tennessee and they say they're here to stay.
The rumors have been swirling around cougars in Tennessee for years.
We get a lot of bobcats, we get a lot of black dogs and things like that people think are cougars, and they're not.
Cougars lived here generations ago, but TWRA says they were hunted out. The only confirmed big cats till now, these guys in the zoo. But based on recent videos and pictures, a different version of the species from out west has returned.
We think the cougars that they're seeing are wild cougars that have migrated, somehow managed to get across the Mississippi River.
A cougar action team of biologists and wildlife officers now believes 6 people have spotted cougars since September in the western half of the state. First, a picture in Obion County, then a hair sample in Carroll County a week later. And in November and December, 4 trail camera sightings in Humphreys County.
They're expanding into our state, not so much as migrating, because we think they're here to stay.
Wildlife officers think 2 or 3 of them now live in Tennessee, but thanks to laws that protect them, more will surely arrive.
They can go hundreds of miles. They travel a long, long way.
Just don't try to hunt them, or you could find yourself behind bars.
If they're threatening your life, it's a whole different situation, but we just don't want people going out and hunting for them.
Now, cougars generally won't come up to people, but if you do come across one, make yourself as big as you can, wave your arms and stand tall. Also, yell and try to intimidate the cat. You can even throw things like rocks to make it turn and run away. Never ever turn your back or run. You don't want to play dead either. Fight back if you are attacked. And if you do have small pets or children around, you're going to want to pick them up because they will look more like prey. In the studio, Rebecca Schleicher, News Channel 5.
So yeah, maybe if you don't like your pet, you throw the pet at the cougar and hopefully the cougar entertains itself with the dog that's barking behind me right now. Anyway, so did anybody notice the video from the trail camera was from a deer hunter, and they had artificially created a scrape, and put some scent there. Did anybody see what the cat was doing when it was smelling? Something your own cat does. Did you see it open its mouth? You know, where cats breathe with their mouth open. That's one of the ways they bring in extra scents. So that was kind of exciting. And this is the updated map. So you can see these sightings are kind of west and southwest of Nashville, Tennessee. They're within about 150 miles of the Mississippi River. But still, it just shows that they have crossed over. And there are one of the sightings that they were able to obtain hair samples from. They actually determined it was a female. So it's just not males. It's also females that are being found. So that could potentially lead to a population of mountain lions in Tennessee, which would be cool. Yeah, and it's Peyton, yeah, and it's oh, sorry guys. Sophie, And that's something that's just happened. Please stop. That's just something that's happened in recent time. One of the reasons I think you'll see so many more deer or so many more mountain lions. I gave you the hint away. Does anybody know what a mountain lion's favorite food is? It's kind of like if I wanted college students, I'd offer beer and pizza, right? What's the equivalent in the deer or the, did it again. I'll just tell you, it's deer, right? The mountain lions absolutely love deer. And one of the things we're seeing too is most mountain lions or most deer, when they're hit on the interstate, you see them dead on the interstate, but the majority of them don't die on the interstate. They're able to continue maybe another 150 feet off the interstate before they die. And so we know bobcats that you're looking at right now are doing this, and we think mountain lions could be doing it, is they literally are running the edges of the interstates and feeding. I've got awesome trail cam video of a female bobcat and 3 of her young it was early January. The air temperature on this mountain in Virginia was about 16 Fahrenheit. And they found that we would stake dead deer out with rebar and then actually take, we would actually take pictures of them or set trail cameras up to see what was happening with them. And we watched a bobcat literally sit there and with her young and consume whole hindquarter of a deer. So it's pretty amazing when they could do that. So bobcats, a lot smaller, right? That characteristic short tail. Lynx rufus actually translates, lynx means lynx and the rufus means red. And our bobcats, especially as you go a little farther south, they do kind of more of a red tint to them. You'll find them in deciduous forest. You'll find them in riparian areas. You can also find them in coniferous forest as well. They're great climbers. They will take rodents, birds, they scavenge things, really adaptable animals. They show up on a lot of game cameras. We were hoping to get one for our mammal project we were doing on campus with the mammalogy course. We did not get one on campus, but all around the area, the folks at Mountain Lake, I know see bobcats often on their camera projects that are there. And when it comes time to have young, they do traditionally have a den site they might take an old groundhog burrow or a hollow log that's down and on the ground and use it potentially as a bedding site. Dean, where in Virginia? Now the entire state. Literally, they have even worked their way into the suburbs of Northern Virginia. They are very, very adaptable. They do quite well. Yeah, that you would be shocked actually as to how many bobcats are really in an area. They are incredibly good at being secretive, and that probably helps their success, especially with coyotes. Coyotes can give them a little bit of a challenge, maybe not even direct predation, but competition for food and things. Okay, the order Chiroptera. Stop. Should have done the headset. The kitten and the dog are playing, which is not great. The order Chiroptera actually means winged hand. They are the most numerous mammal on the planet, they and the rodents. Over 1,400 species. Virginia, we have 16. Nothing like this flying fox that you're seeing on the screen that come from more tropical areas. They are our only true volant mammal, which means able to fly. And they have this patagium, which is the flight membrane. Flying squirrels have one too, but it's not nearly as advanced and as developed. They have a keeled sternum. So the sternum is the breastbone. Does anybody know another type of animal that we've studied that has a keeled sternum? It's not a mammal. Oh, I got a chat. Now I don't have, here it is. Birds, yeah, they got birds. And it's where those pectoralis muscles are attaching to help with the flight. And the same thing with the bats as well. They produce an ultrasonic call actually from their larynx that they're able to receive. And it's one of the ways they're able to locate food. They're able to actually locate their own young sometimes as well when they come into caves, if there are areas where they have mass numbers of young in there. Many of our bats operate at extremely high heart rates, especially when they're in flight, over 1,100 beats per minute. You think about that. How many mosquitoes does a brown bat have to eat to sustain itself at 1,000 beats per minute in flight? D, a whole bunch, right? I mean, that's a lot. And it shows you why they are so good at consuming insects for us. Now, all of our bats in Virginia are insectivorous. In the tropics, you have frutivores, frugivorous organisms that are consuming fruits and other things. But and actually, a lot of the plants, you know, bananas, for instance, mostly are pollinated with bats. I know none of you have ever tried this, but certain beverages of choice, maybe like tequila, is dependent upon, and rum, they're both dependent upon bat pollination. I think definitely the tequila is. So a lot of plants that are out there that would not be pollinated in the tropics without bats. But ours, again, are strictly insectivores. And ours we're a little bit worried about right now because there's a new disease, the white nose syndrome, that's shown up that is really, really giving them a fit. All right, not many images of me ever, but here's a happy one a couple years ago. We've worked on a gray bat colony in southwestern Virginia for, oh my goodness, over 20 years. That's Rick Reynolds in his Virginia Tech shirt, who's actually the state bat biologist for the Department of Wildlife Resources. Rick and I have been working together, like I said, I think about, oh my goodness, longer than 20 years now on this particular colony. Gray bats at one time were federally endangered. They are now federally threatened and most likely are going to be going off that list potentially in the future because they have done so extremely well. What happens is they show some resistance to white nose syndrome. So as many of the other species of bats, their numbers have declined because of white nose. It's opened up the door for gray bats to be able to not have competition. Sorry. Sophie. That was a nice break. That is the UPS truck just driving through the complex. They don't even have to stop at the house, and that sends everyone over the edge. So sorry about that. And that this could continue for a moment. Sorry. All right. So what do we know about bats? The family that we have with bats is Vespertilionidae. Vesper means evening, and Vespertilio means bat. So it's basically the bats that are coming out in the evening. And again, most of our insectivorous bats are. Some of your fruit bats will be diurnal and come out during the day. Oh gosh. Yes, the Corgi and the Bernese Mountain. The Corgi starts it, and then the Bernese Mountain Dog thinks she has to finish it. So anyway, ours in Virginia can be solitary. They can roost in trees. They will do big migrations. Potentially our red bats do migrations. And some will, our species that don't migrate, they actually will spend the winter in caves. I'm sorry, they either migrate or you spend the winters in caves. Oh gosh, are there other dogs? There must be other dogs. Okay, right. Dogs and children, neither are easy and they both are expensive. Okay, so some of our bats, when they're in hibernation, they will, they'll lose about half their weight during that hibernation. And that's one of the problems with white nose syndrome is the fungus starts causing them to basically, the fungus is feeding off their fat reserve and they start running out of fat reserve. And when they do, they have to wake up and start to go feed. And the problem is they're waking up in January to try to feed on insects and there are none available. So that becomes really problematic for them. But yeah, the grays are a cool story because they used to be so uncommon and now they're pretty abundant. All right, so Lasiurus borealis, this is our red bat. The males, their sexual dimorphism, the upper image is the male, the lower image is the female. And they roost in trees. If you think about that, that male bat looks like a dead leaf. And literally they will hang down off of a limb and it basically looks like a a dead leaf. It's great camouflage. The young will actually stay with the female, and in some cases will fly with her until they're able to fly on their own. She will give birth to 4 young. Not all of them will typically make it, but typically at least 2 will. And these things, instead of hibernating, they're going to go a little farther south. They'll do some dormancy in the winter, but it's brief periods. They're going to move into Georgia, into coastal Carolina to spend the winter, where it's not as harsh. And again, no caves for them because they're migratory. And if they are roosting somewhere, not hanging out in the vegetation, it's inside of a hollow dead tree. All right, so our big brown bat, they get that name because they're brown. The fuscus actually means kind of the ashy coloration we see them. These things do great in urban areas. They love old abandoned buildings, buildings with old chimneys. They're all over the Virginia Tech campus as well. I think there used to be a colony somewhere off Main Street, maybe in a church that was there. They're one of our biggest bats. They will hibernate in multiple locations. That was the UPS vehicle leaving. So we know when they come and when they both go. All right. Sorry, folks. Okay. So one of the fun things, does anybody know what that lower right image is?
Is that like a drain? Like on the side of like road? I don't know what it's called. Is it called a drain?
You're really close, Morgan. Very, very close. It has nothing to do with a road. Bat sandwich. That's what it looks like. And they love them. They absolutely love them. Okay, Madeline's got it. That's a bridge overpass. And it's, with bridges, because the materials, a little bit of engineering, when they warm up and get cold, they expand and contract. So when you see a bridge being built, it doesn't directly touch the abutment. It's got to have some expansion room in there. And bats, brown bats especially, love those crevices. So it's very common if you're under bridges that you'll sometimes find a whole bunch of little faces. They're all kind of clustered together like that, looking back at you, which is neat. So we see them again in all kinds of bizarre scenarios. I've had them looking for green salamanders. You put a flashlight in a rock crevice and there's a brown bat that's crawled in there, looking back at you. This is a bat too. I don't recommend you touch any of our bats. This is one you've got to watch. A lot of our bats, if you wear something, what we normally do is just wear like batting gloves. If you've ever played baseball or softball, their teeth are so small they can't go through those. This is one though that will puncture those very easily because of their large size, and they have fairly large teeth. So again, don't handle them unless you're vaccinated for rabies, but be careful. Batting gloves. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. That is good. I'm gonna miss this class. All right, so our order here, right? Artiodactylidae. Artios means even and dactylos means toes. These are your ungulates, right? And a species that shouldn't be here that's in Virginia that causes a lot of problems are wild boar. These things run on their toe tips. So they have hooves instead of claws. You're talking about things such as deer. Their canine teeth are pretty much gone, and they have a 4-chambered stomach. Does anybody know the term we use for that? I think a few of you are animal science majors. You probably know that. The wild boar are actually, they came from Russia originally. Does anybody know the term for having the 4-chambered stomachs, the 4 basic separate? Yeah, there you go. Reagan got it. If animal science people know that very well. It's a really interesting digestive system where food is processed and then sent back up to the oral cavity to be reground again and then moved on back through the digestive system. It's a way to really handle eating plant material that's hard to break down. But the wild boar just does an incredible amount of damage. They're really a problem to all states. Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee have it much worse than Virginia do for now. All right, so the family Cervidae, cervus means deer. within this family, only 2 species in Virginia. Unfortunately, the species in the picture is not one of ours. We would need to go much farther north to run into the moose, but pretty amazing. I encourage you to go somewhere one day and actually get a chance to see them in the wild. They are massive. You just don't appreciate from a picture as to how large these animals really are. All the members of Cervidae, they have even-toed hooves. They have antlers. They have the ruminant stomachs again. You often see them in herds, even though with moose, typically they are much more solitary. How about the one that was introduced into Virginia, right? Cervus elaphus. This is the elk. Ours are actually the Rocky Mountain subspecies that was reintroduced back into Virginia. They have an upper canine tooth. Does anybody know why that led to their demise? You wouldn't expect a herbivorous animal. It's kind of a small canine teeth, but how did that lead to their demise? There were many reasons. One, they were very bulky. They're huge compared to a white-tailed deer, up to 1,000 pounds. So there's a lot of meat for someone wanting food. It makes sense to maybe go after one. But especially toward in the early and mid 1900s, this kind of led to a lot of their declines, that canine tooth. Has anybody ever heard of the Elks Club? It's like a social organization that sometimes people belong to. The old way, their initiation is once you were a member of the club, they would give you like a necklace that was made out of that canine tooth. That's kind of how they got their name. But elk can be nocturnal. They can be crepuscular, where they're operating in the dusk and the dawn. And in the spring and summer, they are grazers, and then they become browsers in the winter. Does anybody know what that means? What's the difference? Grazers in the spring and summer and browsers in the winter. What are you eating if you're a grazer? I'm just trying to get to the chat and hit the, yeah, you're eating grass. And if you're a browser, you're eating very small woody vegetation. So small shrubs and things like that in the winter, because most of the grass is gone. The other fun thing that occurs is in the early fall, early to mid fall, the males will do something called bugling. They make this really cool noise that does kind of sound a little bit like a bugle. They'll throw their head back as the one in the image is doing. And they do that to kind of establish their harem and to bring in all the females that are there. A female normally has 1 to 2 calves each year. And I think I have, yeah. This is a really cool video from the Department of Wildlife Resources about the reintroduction of elk into Virginia just a few years ago.
If you look around here, you'll see that it's wild. This is a place that's wild. It's nature, and that's where the elk like to be. And at least once a year, I try to get out and be in the wild and be part of nature, and that's what elk represent to me.
There aren't even words to describe what today means to me.
There were 11 elk released today, 5 bulls, 5 cows, and 1 calf. The elk is a species that people have long hunted and depended upon for food. Today, we're attempting to restore elk to a small portion of the historic range in Virginia.
From what I understand, the last native elk was killed here in 1855. Since humans played a huge part in the loss of elk from the state of Virginia through loss of habitat and expansion and overhunting, it's only fitting that it's due to humans that they're back. We owe it to future generations. We owe it to the state. We owe it to the habitat. We owe it to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to return what was here rightfully long before we were.
We got it done. We did it right.
One of the best things about this project is the many people that I have worked with and met who have helped the department do this. Buchanan County and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and sportsmen across Virginia.
This is something we have worked very hard for. And as volunteers, everything that we do is on our own time and our own money. And I've had hundreds, if not thousands of people over the past 18 years say this will never happen, but we didn't listen to them.
Well, this is just the first of several releases that we're going to make in Buchanan County. So we're going to hold these elk for 1 to 2 weeks. Then we will release them, watch them. They're all radio collared, so we'll be able to monitor their movements. And we will start to work on our plans for next winter to capture additional elk in Kentucky and do this same process again.
So does anybody know what is that called, where when you're reintroducing something, you build a pen and kind of let them hang out for a couple of weeks before you actually let them go? That's called a soft release. And typically most animals do better with that. They start to familiarize their habitat. So Morgan asked, these came from Kentucky. And the reason Virginia got their elk from Kentucky is because the elk were naturally crossing the Kentucky-Virginia border anyway. So they wanted to kind of keep them the same. Why do you think that they're in Buchanan and Wise and Lee counties, those extreme western counties within our state?
Limited agriculture in those counties?
That's right. So there's limited agriculture. Then where are they grazing? Guess what those 3 states are the most abundant, what they produce in the state of Virginia? They produce coal. And that coal is often done through strip mining, where they take the mountain down. And basically after you get the coal, you're left with this giant rock mound. And they'll re-soil it and replant it. The only thing that really grows there are grasses. Trees can't grow there typically. So it's great spots for these elk to feed. So they'll hang out in the trees during the day, and then they'll come into these open areas again, early morning, late evening to feed. And it is kind of cool to see. I would encourage you to go at some point so you can see it. Okay, so the white-tailed deer in the state of Virginia, or excuse me, in the United States, annually it produces about $500 million. That's huge in revenue from people buying licenses and weapons and, you know, 4-wheel drive vehicles to go deer hunting and things. It's huge. They have, white-tailed deer have a gland that secretes pheromones. They have a couple of those. And that's one of the reasons you'll see them scraping up against trees. They will sometimes spray an interesting pattern. They often will shed their antlers each year. So a lot of people have gotten into not only hunting deer, maybe you don't want to hunt deer, but something that a lot of folks are doing is they're looking for sheds. And literally what they do is they go out and they train dogs and they try to find the shed antlers that the male deer have dropped. The fawns, as you see in that lower right image, they can stand up with about an hour. So they're very quick to get on their feet and get out of Dodge. They want to get away from the afterbirth and other things that will bring in scavengers and predators. One thing we see is a lot of things get blamed for deer predation, black bears, which do predate deer, but not as often as we would think. Coyotes, one of the big things a lot of people don't realize is fawns are often mutilated by domestic dogs. You say, oh, my dog would never do that, but it finds a very young fawn and the dog ends up killing them. So between black bears and other things, that becomes a problem with fawns. Oh. Okay, so the family Delphinidae, the dolphins, we actually have 3 species that can be found in Virginia. They have conical teeth. Every one of the teeth in a dolphin are the same shape and size, or at least the same shape. There could be some slight variations in size. You know, we don't have that. Most other mammals have a lot of diversity of their teeth, but not the dolphins, because all the dolphins really need their teeth for is to hold the fish they catch. Then they swallow the fish whole. That's it. One of the reasons you see these animals coming out of the water is they can go up to 35 miles an hour. So they build up that much speed, and as waves break and things, they'll pop out of the water. We're a little worried. There's the striped dolphin, as you can see. The Atlantic bottlenose dolphin, right? Chiroptera truncatus actually is talking about the roundedness and the length of their snout. They have that really, really long rostrum. They have an interesting digestive system too. Their lower jaw extends beyond the upper jaw. They kind of have like a little bit of an underbite, I guess you would say. And they are our most abundant marine mammal. You would be hard pressed, those of you who grew up in Eastern Virginia, if you've ever spent time in some of the coastal environments or some of the rivers fairly close to the coast, you will find dolphins coming up into these areas to feed. So they do well in low salinity water. They also do well out in the ocean. One of the things we see a lot of our work where I used to take students in our research lab in Mississippi is deep water dolphins, Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, are often different than our coastal ones. There's some slight differences there in their behavior, and they don't really like to socialize with each other. Okay. Oh, wow, 20. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, we used to, like I said, in our coastal ecology course, we would always get some really nice ones. So different family now, Balaenidae, the baleen whales. And one of the rarest whales in the world is the northern right whale. And there was actually a dead one that washed up, maybe North Carolina. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? That's the only one really we have is the northern right whale that comes along the coast of Virginia. As you move to other places, you will find a greater diversity of whales. But I'm sure there are others moving farther off coast, but this animal will literally move right up the coast. And it's part of its demise is they often get hit by boats. And the last estimate, I believe there were maybe 400 in the world left. So finding that dead one just a couple of weeks ago is pretty sad. And you can see these animals are massive, right? They can get over 14 meters long, weigh over 25,000 kilograms. So huge. All right. So there we go. Oh, there's our world of mammals. I hope you enjoyed mammals. Mammals are fun, right? Because we kind of are a mammal. We didn't get into primates because there are really no primates in Virginia. But next year, our new mammologist, he's going to be actually starting in January, but we'll be teaching mammalogy in the fall. So if it's something you find yourself really getting interested in, make sure you take the course. I think you'll enjoy learning about the wild mammals. You'll probably be a little annoyed that many of your classmates won't have your passion, right, on mammals. But, I don't know. I think we had a lot of people in mammalogy this time that were pretty passionate about it. And they're kind of fun. So questions in general. Does anybody have any questions about the exam? Does anybody have any questions remaining about the course? We're going to get on Nick, and he's promised to get these field journals graded for us fairly quickly. So you'll have a great idea as to where you stand in the course. No question. Everybody's quiet tonight. So make sure you go back and review, at the very beginning of the semester, we talked a little bit about what made up a species and some basic taxonomy. Review those 2 chapters, kind of the boring ones, and then start with fish and work your way up. Let me give you an example of a question I like to use. Again, it's open note, but at the beginning of every kind of new chapter, we would talk about how many species have been described. Maybe there's X number of thousand or whatever. One of the questions I've used before that I really like is basically I give you the vertebrate animals. So fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, and say, put them in order with the group that has maybe the least number of species first and work your way down the list to the one that has the most number of species. And that's all in your notes if you go back and look at those. But those are kind of some fun ones as well. You might also expect, well, no, yeah, I think that would be it. Some multiple choice, some short answers, some essay. No questions about the exam? Everybody feels that confident? Everybody's ready to take your exam on a Saturday? Yay. That's really rough when we were in person. I will admit, people were like, oh, I've got to come take an exam on a Saturday. And again, this exam normally would have been, I think, Thursday night at like 8 o'clock. That is, again, remember, it's not the case. You're taking your exam over a period of a couple of days whenever you have a chance to do it. But yeah, and typically when we're live, it's at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, which is fun. So no questions? Your last chance that we'll be live via Zoom. So sad. Nick, let me get back with you about Thursday. I'm not 100% sure on my time yet, but it will happen. Are you going to be in all day?
Yeah, I'm coming in tomorrow and I'm leaving Friday morning.
Okay. Are you going to be able to hit Mountain Lake?
Yeah, I should be able to.
Nice.
Did you want to do that one as well, or do you want me to take care of that?
Yeah, I probably won't have time, but I'm very interested to see if you get the long tail on it again.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, good night. Let me know if you have questions as you're reviewing things. You know, people get in the habit, they'll say, oh, it's an open note, I don't need to study. I find that if you take an hour or two and study as if it was a real exam, a closed book exam, you at least kind of know where all the material is, what chapters it was in, where it's located. So when you get a question, you're like, oh, I need to look that up in my notes. I don't remember that one. You're not just kind of randomly starting to pull out notes. You'll remember, oh yeah, when I reviewed, we covered that when we talked about amphibians or something. So do take some time to look at some information. So great. If anybody has questions or needs help with your spring classes, I know Lauren does a tremendous job, but please let me know. If I can help you, I'd be more than happy to. So, and let's see, Morgan, are you headed out? Yes. When do you leave?
January 31st.
Oh my goodness. Let's hope the COVID doesn't shut down Hawaii.
I'm considered an essential worker. I get to go anyway.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, have fun. We'll miss you here, but enjoy that nice weather.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I'm walking my dogs in the morning right now and the wind chill's 20 degrees, I'm not, if they don't quit barking, you know, we'll have to crawl into them like a tauntaun or something if they keep making that. They keep disturbing class. That's how I'll stay warm. Anyway, all right. Again, Nick and I, you know, he said, make sure when you talk to the students, we truly appreciate everything, and we appreciate your patience. That was a huge one in this whole new way of delivering things. And I appreciate your effort because I know in some ways this might have been harder even than taking it in a traditional manner because we had to do things kind of in such a different manner. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, if I can help you in the future, please let me know. Good luck on all of your exams, not just this one, and just communicate if we can help you, okay? All right. Have a great night.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Bye.